Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. Cole Reiken is with us from Blue Driver. A lot happening in the industry on tools that are helping the dealerships throughout the sales and service process. Cole, welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Thanks, Ted. Great to be back.
Great to have you. So much happening in fixed ops. This has got to be the most exciting time I can ever remember in the industry with all the technological advances and some of the things that you and I will be talking about today.
Yeah, there's so much happening, and but happening both, at the front of the house and the back of the house, if you will. There's so much technology and that's being pushed into the industry right now at all levels. It's really an exciting time to be here.
I think none more important than what you have with Blue Driver. It affects
Thank
both
you.
the front and the back of the house, as you
That's
said. So, Cole, I want to ask you what trends are you seeing out in the dealership world um, for dealerships that don't have reliable diagnostic tools like Blue Driver when buying at an auction or even looking at trade-ins on a daily basis?
Yeah, the trend that I see a lot of still is the manual self-inspection process without a data-driven, diagnostic device of all sorts out there. But what we see is a lot of people just fall back to what they know or what they've been doing, and not really adjusting that process very much. The manual inspections, we talked about this a little bit last time when we were together, but if you start the trade-in process using tools that give you insights and data into the real condition of that vehicle, unlike the manual inspections where you listen to the car, you smell the car, maybe you take it around the block. I really encourage you to take it around the block as best practice.
Yes.
But you really don't always get a true insights of what's happening with that car. So the trend really is that ongoing, if you're not using an OBD2 device to scan vehicles, then you end up overpaying for that car 9 times out of 10 at that point of trade in. You really don't have a great understanding of what's happening there. And, it comes a little bit back to how we, the process or the rhythm that we have when we go to appraise a vehicle. I always encourage people to start that process with a scanning device. Plug it in, let the scan go, perform your exterior walk around of the car, get the visual inspection done. You come back and you have your diagnostic report with that scan, and you understand what's happening there. Our dealers, and we talked a little bit about this last time. What we said, through the survey work we did back in April, we saw a lot of dealers that going through that manual process have a lot of surprise impact to their bottom line for uncaught mechanical issues. It's anywhere between $4,000 and $12,000 per month that is literally just hitting the bottom line because we're not catching those mechanical issues at the trade-in process. And that carries on into the advantages of scanning, where you can actually start the reconditioning process sooner and actually save you time with the reconditioning process. So not only are you preventing costly mistakes hitting the bottom line in the tune of $4,000 to $12,000, you're buying the car for the right money. If you know there's $1,000 of mechanical issues with it, you can take that off the book value of that vehicle. And by passing all that scanning data into the back end tool in the reconditioning process, you can accelerate that. And the combination of using a reconditioning software like a Repair 360 or something along those lines, where you can knock off 3 to 5 days in that reconditioning process, all adds dollars to the bottom line. These are all steps that, if you start at the trade-in process, have a domino effect of profitability on the front end at the used car operations, but also in the back end in the reconditioning process of that as well. And the trend is, when we don't incorporate the scanning, we don't incorporate that data into the overall process, it trickles down from that trade-in process to the back of the reconditioning process, which we see as long as 14 days, and that's very costly.
And Cole, it's not hard to do, especially when provided with the tools. Um, Cole, how does the lack of consistent diagnostic data affect the dealership's ability to accurately value vehicles? I think there's been an awakening in that service drive is such a gold mine with vehicles consistently coming in and out? And what's the downstream impact on profitability?
Yeah, it's a great question. I kind of alluded to some of it in my opening statement there, but if you don't have that, rhythm of and proper practice of how you go about scanning, appraising a vehicle each and every time, and making sure you have a diagnostic scan happening at that point, and then passing that data into the back end where you get into the reconditioning process, and knowing what parts you're going to need and knowing what work is going to happen, you really are giving the repair team, the reconditioning team, a head start for that process. There's no waiting for parts. There's no waiting to book your third party technicians. All that can happen up front to accelerate that whole process. That has that entire domino effect of the benefit of the value of the bottom line up front, and as I mentioned, the impact of the profitability increases you find through the reconditioning process. And it's not only the profitability, it's also the workflow part of it as well that helps, the rhythm and coordination. You don't have a third party tech showing up and saying, hey, I'm here for whatever car, and nobody knows, where the keys are for it, or nobody weren't expecting you. By using, the proper reconditioning software, it can help you coordinate that entire process, which is really what it should be, instead of a little bit of the mayhem and free for all that tends to happen, when you get, tech showing up unexpectedly. So
Historically, in the past, we didn't have these tools, as and a lot of times, used car managers, if you will, we went with our gut, right, in terms of what we thought the vehicle was going to be worth. But today, what operational problems tend to surface when dealerships rely solely on, let's say, that visual inspection without using these tools, without using the basic tools, instead of, as you said, data-driven diagnostics?
yeah, I think there are a couple things that happen there. I think first, right away you have the impact in the reconditioning process where we see, unexpected mechanical issues pop up if you aren't using a tool. So then you have the additional time and additional expense of having to account for those. Oh, like we just sold a car, we got a car in, we bought a car off somebody, and there's now an additional $4,000, $6,000 for a transmission we weren't aware of, or a couple $1,000 for an ABS issue that was gone uncaught. So in addition to the time that we have of, the slower process to get those vehicles reconditioned, it's that the domino effect is it's slower to get that back to the front line, and then it's more costly for you both in a repair perspective as well as a holding time of like how long that car you're going to hang on to before you're getting it back to that front line. So I think that's the kind of the first one. And the second one, this is a little bit of impact on the resale of that vehicle, having a potential downstream impact of your F&I office, of taking a vehicle that may not have been, thoroughly reconditioned down the road. You might end up with other impacts to selling warranties and other issues with that vehicle, and trying to get an extended warranty placed on that used vehicle down the road. So it doesn't. It's not a direct line there, but you definitely have some risk and some additional overhead to be thinking about, in addition to that slower turn time, getting that car through the reconditioning process, dealing with that uncaught mechanical issue or that surprise repair you need to make, both from a time perspective as well as from a financial perspective of actually repairing that car.
And let's go to that financial perspective for a moment, just as a follow-up. Um, if you look at the last couple of years in the retail automotive business, in all business, there's been a lot of inflation, but a lot of costs have increased. Technicians, hours, the hourly rate we charge, customer pay,
Absolutely.
warranty, parts have gone up. There's been significant increases. So this time to line, if you will, that we're talking
Sure.
about, is even more important because it's multiplied now exponentially by all these increased costs that we maybe didn't have 5 years ago, but today that's entered into the equation. So now,
Yeah.
there's a lot more focus on having the right tools and doing this right from the start.
We used to say, rule of thumb is roughly $100 a day, and this is
Yeah.
going back a couple of years ago,
Okay.
of holding that car. In the time it takes from the point you take it in on trade to the point you get it to the front line, ready again. And we can just use that as a nice round number, makes math easy. But if you think about the number of trade-ins a dealership might be taking in an average week, and if you're
Yeah.
thinking, the industry stat says the average recon turnaround time can be as much as 14 days. So if you think, and that's per car. So if you think you might have 4 or 5 cars, in that reconditioning process, waiting to get the recon performed, the repairs done, and ready to go back to the front line, you're looking and holding, we'll just use that because it's nice round numbers, $400 or $500 a day, just in what you're paying to the bottom line, just to get that car back out to the front line. So if you can cut off, 3 or 5 days in that process, that's just right to your bottom line. And what we're talking about is improving small improvements in the overall work stream, starting by scanning a vehicle up front and adding some software like a reconditioning through a repair 360 to help manage that recon process the whole way through.
And Cole, I've seen some studies, I know you have as well, that the amount of time that a vehicle spends in inventory, I believe it's the first 15 days of that vehicle being on the lot when the dealership can command the most gross profit for that vehicle. And then once you get out, in the next couple weeks and then beyond 30 days, the gross profit on the sale of that vehicle diminishes rapidly, quickly. So the earlier the better to get these vehicles ready.
Yeah, the faster you can turn it around, the more likelihood you're going to make a higher gross profit on that vehicle, and the whole profitability machine really starts kicking in then.
All right, so let's go back to the diagnostic tool. Let's go back to the blue driver, which we need to get in the hands of as many of the right people as possible. From your perspective, Cole, the absence of a comprehensive diagnostic tool like this, how does that affect relationships with customers? Customers know about these tools, by the way. Obviously, it's available to them as well, and particularly around trust and transparency, which I think it's never been more important than it is today.
Let's take the second part of your question first. The trust and transparency part. We hear from our customers all the time, um, that it is frequent feedback they get in separating themselves from other dealerships that are still doing manual inspections of the vehicle, like we talked about off the top. Customers are coming in, they see the thoroughness of the trade-in process they're going through. They tend to ask a lot of questions about it, but that conversation is like, we want to understand the condition of your vehicle so we know how to give you the most and money for it, to give you the right number on that vehicle. And they can take that number and they can give them a diagnostic report at the end of it. And the benefit of that is in parallel is that you're being transparent in the trade-in process to the customer, and that gives you the backup, the justification of why you're providing the vehicle. It's, here's book value. Well, why is my vehicle not worth book value or more? Or why is my vehicle not worth market value? Well, we've done a scan, we see a few issues with the vehicle. I can't offer you that because it's not the same. I'm gonna have to recondition that. I need to take off whatever it is, $1,000 off that price. And giving that transparency through the process builds confidence that, hey, this dealer knows what they're talking about. Also shows the customer that they understand and you're trustworthy, and that you're looking for what you're actually buying, but also can give that information and provide that justification back to that customer. So it works both ways. The transparency leads to having better conversations and having more insightful conversations with that potential customer, and really goes a long way to earn the trust and helps build that relationship that you're having with that prospect that you're having that conversation with. We get that feedback all the time, and it is one of the kind of unique value propositions that Blue Drivers has, with that customizable diagnostic report that we offer back, that can be printed or emailed and sent to a customer, so they see what you see at that point. You're not hiding anything. It really helps to build that trust and have that conversation with the customer.
A few weeks ago, back in October, I saw in the news that the average new car price in North America is now well over $50,000
Yeah,
average for a call. That's hard to believe.
yeah.
$50,000. Okay. But that has a trickle down effect. All right. On all these things, as we mentioned, value of trades, value of the importance, by the way, of doing an appraisal as often as possible. Okay.
that
Some of your thoughts.
consistency in doing that same
Yeah.
routine or same process each and every time, and you ingrain that into how you do it, regardless of who's doing that inspection, can build that trust along the same way with the same tools. Yeah.
Well, the new vehicle today has a tighter margin, okay? And the industry is shifting toward that as well, okay? We see that. And we're also shifting to a faster turn. Everything's speeding up, Cole. Everything's going faster than it was a couple years ago. Um, it's true. What
Yeah.
role do you see advanced diagnostic tools like Blue Driver are going to be playing in giving dealers a competitive edge versus the dealer down the street who's not using anything like this at all?
Yeah, I think well, let's go back right to the top. What I said off top, but if you're scanning at the beginning of that trade-in process, you're going to find more profitability. You're going to build more trust with that customer. You're going to have a smoother transaction up front as that carries through to the reconditioning process, and you're going to find efficiencies there, especially when you pair that data that comes out of an OBD2 device, such as Blue Driver, into a diagnostic software system. Sorry, a repair tool like a Repair 360. And in addition to that, something we hadn't touched on before, but the data that the OB2 is giving out is the incorporation with appraisal systems that are out there. There's softwares we work directly with that gives the appraisal data and the reconditioning data right in to help you put that price on that vehicle. So one shot, you scan, you do the visual inspection, all that data is moving on your behalf into the tools that the dealership uses on a day-to-day basis. So be it a reconditioning system into the appraisal system. And then, again, we're going back to the bottom line we were talking about with, the speed back to lot. And if we can knock 3 to 5 days off of that reconditioning time, at the example I used at $100 a day minimum, you probably have
Minimum,
right? And you probably have 3 or 4 cars, maybe five going through it at the same time. You
right?
add up that, that's $300 to $500 a day you're paying just to get those cars reconditioned back to lot. That's not actually doing the reconditioning work and the cost associated with that. That's just your holding and your cost to get it going again. So it all goes back to the bottom line at the end of the day. If you start with a tool that gives you that transparency and it gives the system that you use every day the data and insights to what that vehicle is, then it speeds everything up downstream for you and it just goes right to your bottom line.
And Cole, I don't think anybody in our industry can deny the use of a tool like Blue Driver. I mean, we're way beyond, years beyond proof of concept, right? These have been out for quite a while now, and you've perfected it on the Blue Driver side.
We have, thank you very much. This goes to the thousands of dealers that are already our customers are actually scanning in during the wholesale process, or auction customers that use Blue Driver right into their condition reports. All the way through the industry, the data is there powering condition reports and trade-in information, and we're doing it at scale across the industry right now. So if my suggestion, dealers should be adopting this type of technology. It does prove out in the bottom line of preventing costs, uncaught costs. It helps you become more profitable on each transaction. And at the end of the day, that data can be used in other parts of your business, like reconditioning, to save you the time and get that vehicle out to the front line and generate more profit off of that future sale.
And Cole, some dealerships only empower a few individuals to have the Blue Driver, but really, the more qualified people you have that in the hands of, the more efficient you're going to become, and overall, you're going to reduce that time to line. So it would make sense to start earlier, as often as possible with Blue Driver.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Ted. You're right on.
Right. All right. So for the audience, Cole, who may not be using an advanced diagnostic tool like this yet, Cole, at Blue Driver, I know you're very active on social media. I see your videos all the time. Okay, we were talking about that in the green room. How
Thank
do
you.
people reach out to you? I know there's an email scrolling across the bottom. What's the best
Yeah.
way to get involved?
Thank you. Yeah, it's Cole.Reiken at repairify.com is the easiest way to get hold of me there. Or for our dealership audience, bluedrivermax.com is our URL to get to.
All right, Cole, thank you so much, and appreciate all you do to advance our industry forward, and
Thanks, Ted.
great
Appreciate that.
information. And here in the States, we're celebrating Thanksgiving next week. So I want to wish everybody in the Blue Driver family, all your employees and dealers and everybody, a very happy Thanksgiving next week.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Take
All
care.
right, everybody. Cole Reiken, everybody. He's the managing director at Blue Driver. You can visit them on the web. Very active on social media. Cole Reiken, everybody, with Blue Driver here today at the Fixed Stops Roundtable.